What's up, everyone? I just want to start by saying to all of you who grew up having your own room, I am so jealous. I never had my own room growing up. For the entirety of the 18 years I lived at my parents' house, I had to share just about everything with my twin brother. Bedroom, bathroom, and closet. Because of that, I wasn't all that willing to share anything else with him that my parents didn't make me. For example, the one thing that was completely off limits were my shoes. He'd ask me, beg me, and even plead to borrow an item from my side of the closet. But my answer was always the same: not a chance. He eventually gave up on asking and just started taking. For a while, he was good at hiding it away from me. He'd take a pair of my shoes when I wasn't looking and wear them somewhere I wouldn't see him, and then put them back before I knew they were gone. But then one day, I busted him in a pair of my Jordans. Let me say that again, my Jordans, my favorite pair of Jordans. And he just took them. Let's just say it didn't go well for my twin brother that day. Okay, it wasn't really that he was wearing my shoes. And if I was really honest, it wasn't about my shoes at all. It was the fact that he had taken something of mine without my permission. He knew that I'd say no if he asked, yet he did it anyway. He took what was mine without my consent. And that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. No, we're not talking about siblings or twins of yours who steal clothes, although I'm sure we'd have a lot to talk about. But today we're talking about consent. You've probably heard the word consent before, but just so we're on the same page, it simply means this: to agree to do something or to allow something to take place. Consent is one tool used to keep relationships in a good place. It can apply to something as small as siblings taking clothes without your consent, but it's usually a word used to talk about a more serious topic. You know this. You typically hear it in the context of dating and sex. Whether it's consent to go on a date, to do something sexually, to send a pic, or to share a pic, consent is a pretty important topic. Now, maybe you're sitting there wondering, is it even okay to talk about this at church? And I'll be the first to admit, it does feel a little weird and even uncomfortable as a topic. But the truth is, the idea of consent shows up all over the place in culture. We typically see it in stories or news reports where consent wasn't a part of decisions and the bad things that happened as a result. Then there's also a message that many of us get in culture that goes like this: as long as two people consent, no matter what it is, you're good. In other words, consent often answers the question most of us are really asking when we're trying to decide what to do. The real question is often, will I get in trouble? And when both people consent, we assume the answer is no. Here's what I mean. On a really basic level, when it comes to how we treat other people, most of us behave with a minimum requirement mindset. Instead of asking ourselves what we should do to treat others well or build them up, we look for the least we can do and still not get in trouble. Think about it. When it comes to how you talk to your mom, you use just enough sarcasm and attitude to make a point, but not enough to sound like a total jerk. When you're at school and saying something about a person you really don't like, you think about what you can get away with without getting yourself in trouble. In your relationship with your boyfriend or girlfriend, you focus on the things they didn't tell you not to do, because if they didn't say no, then it's okay to try, right? We look for minimum requirements. As humans, our temptation is always to do the least amount of good behavior that we should and the maximum amount of bad behavior that we can get away with. Some of you know this because you've spent time with someone trying to test the limits of what they can get away with. Maybe you've been asked to send pictures that you didn't want to send. Maybe you've received pictures that you didn't want to see. Maybe you felt pressure to go further sexually than you wanted to. Maybe you've been forced or guilted into behaviors, sexual or not, that you didn't want to participate in. Maybe you dated a guy who consistently talked down to you or called you names. Maybe you dated a girl whose actions made it difficult to trust her. If you've been on the receiving end of this kind of behavior or pressure, and what you wanted wasn't considered, you don't need me to tell you how bad and confusing it feels. And whether you consented or didn't, you know those kinds of requests bring up a lot of questions, sometimes even pain or regret. Now, don't get me wrong, consent matters. If you ever had something happen to you, big or small, without your consent, you know how horrible that can make you feel. When I think about the story of my friends, the students, and the adults I know who've been in similar situations, I find myself with the question, is consent really all that matters? When it comes to your dating life as a mature person, you have to answer this question because it will drive so many of your decisions. And if you're a Jesus follower, this is an even bigger deal. I'm not just talking about whether to have sex or not. I'm talking about how you treat people, what you ask for, what you try to talk others into, and what you try to talk them out of. That's why we're talking about this today. And as we do, I think you'll find that consent matters. But it's just one piece of a bigger puzzle. And I think changing just one word in how we talk about consent, sexuality, and dating could clear up so much confusion and prevent so much pain. And that's why we're talking about this today. I want to look at a passage of the Bible today that I think will help in this conversation. It's from a letter written by a guy by the name of Paul. In this passage, he talks to a group of Christians who lived in Rome. And here's what you need to know about Paul. Paul was passionate about Jesus followers treating each other well. So a lot of his letters focused on that. At the time, Christianity was brand new. A lot of people were hearing the name Jesus for the first time. Back then, people didn't even have preconceived opinions about what it meant to be a Christian like they do today. So the best way for people to judge what they thought Christianity was all about was to look at the people who claimed to follow Jesus. Those people would give the world an idea of what this type of faith was all about. In other words, the reputation of Christianity depended on the way Jesus followers represented him to the rest of the world. With that in mind, here's what Paul wrote to them. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. It might seem like a basic how to treat people idea to us living in this century, but Paul was writing in the first century to people in a culture where everyone had to look out for themselves. People didn't look out for each other and protect each other, which actually may not seem all that different from what you experienced in high school. You know what it's like to be in a class, on a team, or in a friend group where everybody only cares about themselves. Now imagine an entire world that operated in that same manner. And to that world, Paul is saying there's a better way to live, and he had a good reason. But Paul consistently told people that Jesus demonstrated a new way to live. In Paul's world, it seemed crazy to suggest honor as the new standard. But for Paul, Jesus changed everything. And Paul was so committed to Jesus that he boldly and passionately affirmed this message. Value people for who they are, what they want, and what they don't want. That is the Jesus standard of behavior. And I personally love the word that Paul used here. It wasn't just consent, it was honor. Honor is just another way of saying to show respect. If you respect someone, you do so much more than just the bare minimum. You do the best for them in every area, including areas of consent. If you've been in a situation where you didn't give consent and you're wondering why it feels as bad as it does, this is why. Because you weren't honored or respected. You were devalued. And that wasn't how God intended for you to be treated. On the other hand, if you've treated someone with the bare minimum of kindness or consideration, it's communicated the same message to them, that they aren't valued, respected, or honored. When it comes to the way we treat each other, especially those of us who follow Jesus, we're called to so much more than just the bare minimum requirements. We're called to honor. But Paul goes one step further. He says to honor others above yourselves. Among many things, this means doing what's best for them, no matter what you want from them. Maybe you've considered sending photos to a guy because it'll get his attention, but you choose not to because you know it's not what's best for him or you. That's honor. Maybe you've asked a girl out and she keeps turning you down. You want to keep pressuring, but you know she wants you to stop. So you stop. That's honor. Maybe you find yourself in the moment, about to go one step further physically or sexually with someone. You're about to cross a boundary even though you've had conversations about not crossing it. So you stop, even though you don't want to. And even if they say it's okay, because you know this isn't what's best for them or you. That's honor. In so many ways, Jesus changed the way people understood each other then and now. From following Jesus, Paul was teaching others to see people and treat them differently, to honor them no matter what, because God values them no matter what. And you know what? The same is true for you, because you are valuable to God. This also means doing what's best for you and asking others to show you honor as well. When you're in a situation that you don't want to be in, you can say so. When you're being pressured to do something you don't want to do, you can say no. When someone pushes a boundary you've set up for yourself, you can speak up and be firm. Because as much as we're called to honor other people, we can expect to receive that same honor in the way others treat us. Here's a simple way to remember it. Expect and express honor. Honor is so much more than the minimum requirement of will I get in trouble or is it legal? It's a higher standard. We need to expect to be honored by others, and we need to demonstrate that same honor towards them. You see, honor isn't just about respecting the consent of other people. It's more than that. It's about respecting the person no matter what. One of the very first things the Bible tells us about who we are is that we're made and created in the image of God. That means we have value in God's eyes. He sees us as people who deserve to be honored simply because we exist, not because of what we offer or are willing to do. And He wants us to see both ourselves and others the same way. We respect and honor the image of God in others, and we should expect others to respect and honor the image of God in us. So, what does it look like to express honor? Well, first, ask yourself, am I doing what's best for them despite what I want from them? Look at your choices, words, and behaviors. Then, look at your relationships. Do you show honor in all of your relationships? Next, understand there is a higher standard than consent. Consent is definitely important, and it's a huge part of honoring other people. But remember, we're called to a higher standard. Don't view your relationships, behaviors, and choices through the lens of convincing another person to say yes or no. Instead, look at it through the lens of honoring what's best for them and respecting their words and their choices. Finally, accept the no. Sometimes one of the easiest ways to honor others is simply to listen to their no. When someone tells you no, they mean it. So honor them by stopping right then and there. In addition to that, sometimes you need to pay attention to the no that you feel in your conscience. Even when you want to say yes, even when the other person is saying yes or isn't saying no, this can be the toughest arena to accept the no. So it may mean that you need to talk to someone that you trust, someone like your small group leader. It's a great way to get the support and accountability you need to help you express honor to both yourself and others. So that's what it looks like to express honor. So what does it look like to expect honor? Well, first, practice saying no. If you can practice saying no to small things you don't want to do, like watching a movie you don't want to see, hanging out with people you don't really want to hang out with, or eating something you don't like, it will help you feel more comfortable saying no when the stakes are higher. You'll become more confident at using your voice to express what's not okay with you. Next, decide how you want to be treated. Determine right now what honor looks like to you. Set the standard for what's okay and what's not when it comes to how others treat you. Then tell someone you trust, someone who can look out for you and make sure you're getting the honor that you deserve. Pre-deciding will help you stick to your standard and help you recognize when you're not being honored. Lastly, speak up. It's possible that some of you have asked to be honored and not given your consent, but your voice wasn't respected. And because of that, you're dealing with things like guilt and shame, anger, and even secrecy. First, I want you to know that I'm so sorry that has happened to you. And this is a safe place to talk about it with someone like a small group leader or a trusted friend. What was done to you wasn't honor, but you need to know that you still deserve to be honored. You should still expect honor in light of those things. One of the best ways you can expect honor is to speak up now and share what has happened to you with someone you love and trust. Someone who wants to honor you by helping you through this experience in your past. Now listen, I get that every dating situation, every late night text thread, and every relationship is different. And I get there's no way we could talk about what honoring means in every situation. But But that's why small group is so important this week. Small group is a place where you can talk about real life situations like these with friends and an adult who cares about you. So, as you head out, I want you to think about this question. What does it look like to expect and express honor? Sometimes a topic like consent can make us feel uncomfortable or even confused about what we're supposed to do. That's why I want you to think about the word honor. Imagine if we all did this. Imagine if the person you're dating or the person you're going to date took this message seriously. Imagine if your ex took this seriously. Imagine if your friend's boyfriend or girlfriend started to honor them and expect honor from them. So many of our relationships would be better because of it.